Hello and welcome on Primetime Watchmaking in the News, your recap program of what has been going on in the watchmaking industry of the last few weeks. And we have a few news for you, business, watches, fun, or a mix of all three. So before jumping properly into this, just wanted to kindly remind you to hit that subscribe button, press the bell icon, add some likes. Haha, got you, I'm just joking. I mean, we're not like this, and I think you guys know it. So yes, before plunging into newsworthy stuff, I just wanted to recall some of the videos published since our last prime time. Even if it dates a bit, but this includes naturally our rather extensive coverage of the Geneva Watch Days, a strong and very pleasant edition getting bigger every year. Still, for the time being, remaining very human, and besides our coverage, we were also present with the Horopedia Foundation, and I'll get back on this very meaningful project a bit later on. But to bounce off this Geneva event, well, October is packed with various watch shows around the world. For instance, the first Milano Watch Week, which occurred a few days back, the first edition of I Am Watch, the Singapore event organized by Michael Tay and his team. And I must say, I wish I could have gone, as it will probably resonate along the line of the Dubai Watch Week. Well, then you have the CR about to happen in Mexico City, followed by Watch Time New York. So for those on site or even traveling to these shows, well, I can only say enjoy, and please share some Viva watchmaking vibes from us. Okay, back to content, and we also talked with Pierre Biver about the brand's new collection, a simpler three-hands watch, and what it means for them in terms of brand development. But we also brought you some surprising stuff with this report on explosive-made diamonds used for polishing paste and grinding process used in the watchmaking industry. A Swiss company which started its activity some 70 years ago, and with continuous R&D has become a world leader of such solutions today used mainly in the super high-tech microchip industry. An interesting story with which all started with watchmaking, and I like these kind of stories. We also had a very interesting discussion here regarding the 100th anniversary of a very special institution, the SSC, the Société Suisse de Chronométrie, the Swiss Chronometrical Society. And we came back on its inception, its very important role for the industry by seamlessly pushing the scientific dimension of watchmaking, and all this for the greater good of the watches we're wearing today. Very interesting talk. And then I had yet another chance to put my eyes on what I reckon is part of this very small club of grail watches of the last 50 years, the Oval No. 1, developed and manufactured by brilliant English watchmaker Derek Pratt, a man slightly in the shadow of other watchmakers of his time, a man who passed away in 2009, but his legacy sure lives on, and this would actually deserve a full video from us. So coming back on the Oval No. 1, this timepiece took more than 20 years in the making with its fascinating tourbillon with détente escapement, a piece developed for Urban Jurgensen brand, and will soon leave the hands and heart of its current owner, our good friend Dr. Helmut Krott, who has truly enjoyed it since its release, and he decided to part ways with it for the lucky pleasure of a new privileged collector, as this masterpiece will be auctioned in November by Philips here in Geneva. In my opinion, it totally deserves to reach a proper price tag as a simple token of honor, just meaning that it unfortunately won't be me. So yes, quite a few videos to check back onto, and as a little teaser, I can also tell you that we have some very good ones coming your way, and I know we maybe publish a bit less than some other watch media, but must admit that we clearly prefer to take our time and come up with some more constructed videos. And some of the ones to come will focus a bit more on some legendary people of the industry. For instance, we will soon publish a video regarding Daniel Roth, and I'm talking about the man, not the brand, though I will obviously enumerate some of that story too, as we recently had the great chance to spend some time with him and his family in the Vallée de Joux. Okay, next legend, and we have an amazing portrait of Mr. Jean-Pierre Hagman, the illustrious case maker behind some of the most beautiful watch cases ever made, as simple as that. And I can already warn you that this will be a pretty long one, like an hour-long one, if you see what I mean. But the guy is just so interesting, funny, and his experience is totally worth sharing. By the way, he was just awarded the Gaia Prize in the craftsmanship category, the Gaia Prize being kind of the Nobel equivalent for watchmaking. So congratulations, Mr. Hagman. Let's continue down the legend path, and I hope some of you remember this fantastic interview we had here with Mr. Georges Dubois, the 100-year-old watchmaker. Well, he's now 103 and still going strong, still witty, and still in love with watchmaking. And the other day, well, we were with him and some other friends to take him along the visit of the new Geneva watchmaking school, a school he attended in the late 1930s. Yeah, well, 103, you know. Well, this was such an absolutely magical and emotional moment, and I'm very happy that we'll be able to share this as a wonderful follow-up of this video mentioned above, which is a must-see for those who are not yet acquainted with it. Link below. Okay, let's now properly start this edition of Primetime with some business news, and since you guys know I'm more of a positive person, well, I won't talk too long about the inevitable slowdown of the watchmaking industry, but the difference is that it's starting to really hurt some brands, and foremost the ones on the front line, meaning the suppliers of the industry. We've heard more publicly of layoffs, even company going down, and this trend should unfortunately continue, but it's precisely now and in the coming month that we'll be able to see who can navigate in these tougher conditions, who can be creative and smart. But all in all, I don't think there's a need to be too alarming, though this ongoing resizing is a sad reality, and to be honest, it concerns the entire luxury sector. Yes, there are still plenty of affluent people out there, and more today than 10 years ago, but the luxury industry still needs volumes to prevail, and for instance, the significant structural shift witnessed in China, both on economical and political terms, are for sure impacting numbers. So for the watch brands heavily exposed on such a market, well, the impacts are obviously a bit more brutal, and for the others, well, they do their best to compensate here and there. But don't get me wrong, everyone is currently hurt, and even the independents feel this shift. Not to the same extent, but people buying into independent brands are generally the ones that have a tendency to collect a few watches instead of, let's say, buying 5 watches this year. Well, they might stick to 1 or 2, and there you go, a bit less demand. Okay, the appeal for independence makes it that these brands will be able to satisfy other or new customers, but you get my point. So talking about hit brands, and I know this is a bit harsh, but we learned a few weeks back that Breguet got a new CEO, and I sincerely hope this will help them get their stuff together, because I personally think that it's quite sad to have witnessed how such an illustrious name has lost its mojo over the past few years. After the passing away of Mr. Hayek Sr. some 14 years ago, well, the brand continued on that momentum set by his visionary thinking, but this pretty much dried out, and considering the name, the history, the legitimacy, the available archives, well, there is so much to be done with all these unbelievable assets, and the nomination of Mr. Gregory Kissling might be a sign that things will head in the right direction. Mr. Kissling, who we met a few times during Basel World, comes from Omega, from the product side of the business, and this is good news in itself. So we most certainly wish him well, and we just hope not to see a Swatch Type 20 in the coming month. There's so much better to be done. Okay, next business news, and it's not that we like to talk about our colleagues, but I do have to mention the Hodinkee kind of debacle, and sorry to use this term, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Hodinkee has definitely marked the watch media scene over the last 15 years and contributed very favorably in bringing people into the watchmaking world, but then it maximized its reach by starting to sell watches. I mean, I can understand the appetite, I also thought about it, but that didn't go anywhere for us for some rather silly reasons, and we abruptly stopped, and thank God we did. I mean, I was feeling quite uncomfortable with this prospect, so kind of a blessing that it immediately leads. Okay, we didn't become rich in the process, but that's a totally different story, and I'm totally fine with it. But my point is that as a media, it's kind of complicated to be on all fronts at the same time, as the collusion of interest becomes inevitable, and you might lose on both sides of the business. Obviously, this development of activity for Hodinkee was quite capital intensive, and they had to fuel this with fresh money. Even LVMH invested in it at a point where it was thought that Hodinkee's valuation was around $100 million mark. So yes, quite something, right? And one could say nice success, but when, for instance, I met the CEO of the company who was very proud to tell me a couple of years ago that they had a staff of 150 people, well, this kind of shocked me. I mean, you don't have to be a finance guy to do the math regarding the overhead, the huge fixed cost added to the cost of inventory. So over the past 2 years, we heard about the important downsizings of the Hodinkee to the point of today being fully bought by a retailer, meaning Watches of Switzerland. And we also already discussed the financial difficulties encountered by the retailer. So I don't really know what it lies ahead for both of them, but of course we wish them good. Well, just to say that the business model of media outlets that have practically all become retailers themselves in one way or another is most certainly complicated and even fragile because of the compromise you have to deal with. And personally, I find it quite incredible to see that most watch media, even bloggers, vloggers, are there to sell you something ultimately. Okay, it's not easy to find a magical formula, and the Hodinkee example just proves how tricky it can be. So talking about business and e-commerce, just wanted to follow up on Richemont's struggling adventure in Net-a-Porter Mr. Porter, as they finally found a solution to take it out of their books, well, sort of. Overall, it is believed Richemont lost approximately $4 billion with this side project, so yes, quite a costly adventure. And apparently the solution is more or less one of a share swap with the luxury e-commerce platform Mytheresa, a company started as a boutique in 1987 and who started its online business in 2006. Mytheresa will now own 100% of Yoox Net-a-Porter, and Richemont will have a 33% stake in Mytheresa. So I won't go in any further details, but we know that Richemont had been looking for a solution since many months, and though it's quite a severe hit, it's also a bit of a gamble, as Mytheresa needs to truly benefit from this acquisition. Well, time will tell, as we say, and in all honesty, well, I had never heard of Mytheresa before, just proving that I'm maybe not the prime target of such platforms. In other news, Antoine Pin from Bulgari has officially started his role as CEO of TAG Heuer and is already cooling a nice magnum of Moët & Chandon to make a champagne shower for Formula One pilots, as LVMH has successfully signed its landmark deal with the prestigious automotive series. I mean, we shared some financial insight about this marriage in our previous Primetime, and it has now just been officially confirmed. Starting from January of 2025, Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy and TAG Heuer will be the main partners of Formula One, so be ready to see famous chocolate and beige cases for Formula One trophies, Moët Hennessy drinks, new TAG Heuer visibility as the timing partner, and probably even collabs besides the ones the brand already enjoys with Red Bull Racing, and potentially even new ambassadors for Hublot timepieces. Well, annually LVMH will be paying $150 million for this partnership, and this for the next 10 years, and it represents the triple of what Rolex was previously paying, so quite a steep increase. But it is true that F1 has become quite a phenomenon in the last few years, but will it remain as such considering some of the eco-bashing rhetoric the sport is facing? Well, quite an investment for the Arnault family, which needs some serious leveraging for a proper return, but we can trust their judgment. And now the real question is, where will Rolex be investing its spare $50 million? Will they go in the direction of more sustainable projects such as art and culture? Quite probable. And this is something we know is also at the heart of some other brands' sponsorship strategy. Okay, call it greenwashing if you want, but nonetheless, this is taken very seriously by many today. For instance, AP pulling out of gold, or think of the ongoing America's Cup, the world's oldest sports trophy, for which one could argue that sailing is sustainable by definition, but the means needed to be competitive implies such huge budgets and resources that it kind of fades away the sustainable dimension and resulting in not many brands involved in this event. Louis Vuitton, of course, immensely present, but they've been historically involved with the event, which bears its name since such a long time. I mean, that the association of the brand and the cup has become an institutional one. Then you have Omega, also a long-term partner, but of a team, the Kiwis, and it seems that this will again result in a successful partnership as the New Zealand squad is in a very good position to hold on the cup yet again. Well, fresh news, and this is done. The Kiwis have done it. Bravo to them, and holding on the jug for the third consecutive time. Quite exceptional. Panerai with the Italian team Prada, also long-term partners, and this year for the return of the former winning team, the Swiss team of Alinghi. Well, Tudor got involved, and I have to be honest, well, it didn't go well for us that much. I mean, even a bit kind of embarrassing feel sometimes. But that's the only new player. No other brands got involved for this edition, despite the spectacular images, the crazy technology, the sporty aspect. Well, that wasn't enough for other brands to join in the party, and this says quite a lot. Meanwhile, we're getting ready for one of the most important events of the year in the Swiss watch industry, and it's the watches Oscar, the GPHG. This year I was selected as a jury member of the 2024 edition, and I can't wait to reveal some of its secrets once the ceremony is over. But I just wanted to remind you that this year the GPHG introduced a new category, time only, open to classic timepieces with 2 or 3 hands and no complications. Simple as it may seem, well, this category may be the hardest to judge as it represents the essence of watchmaking. Still in November, Geneva will be hosting the annual autumn sales of Christie's, Sotheby's, Antiquorum and Phillips, where their special highlights and top lots. Quality and rareness will still be rewarded, but this will give us a good idea of the general market trends. But at the same time, it is no surprise that the auction houses are trying to present things differently. And for instance, at the end of November, Phillips, again in association with Bax & Russo, will be hosting the Toki Watch Auction, the first ever thematic sales dedicated to the Japanese watch collecting world. From extraordinary timepieces owned by important Japanese collectors to the watches made exclusively for the Japanese market and by the independent watchmakers of the land of the rising sun. This thematic sale will take place in Hong Kong on November the 22nd and will feature names such as Naoya Hida, Hajime Asaoka, Jiro Katayama, Nayuta Shinahora, Takano Kataro, and Masahiro Kikuno. There will also be pieces from Watch Museum Voga, Japan's first museum to display antique watches from world-famous brands, so it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. And for those of you planning to be in Geneva early November, well, the global preview of the lots of these auctions is scheduled here for November 6 to 10, and even if you can't buy any of these watches, it's always a great opportunity to see in the flesh some of these great pieces. Okay, let's leave the business section, let's talk new watches. And as a smooth transition, let's start with the pure beauty. If anyone had any doubts about Mr. Trump's good taste, something already proven by some wonderful artifacts such as these classy sneakers, well, I guess most of you have already seen how this translates into watches with this exquisite $100,000 tourbillon, more or less the same movement used by the Bio Chapter 4, which, by the way, comes at approximately $6,000. Okay, lots of gold and diamonds, but I really think that instead of yellow gold, well, orange gold would have been much more suited. I mean, just for coherence purposes. So let's now be a bit more serious, starting with the new Pioneer Retrograde 2nd Midnight Blue by H. Moser, robust yet elegant with a sophisticated complication as a twist. A module developed by Moser's partner Agenor, which brings to life their first retrograde 2nd complication featuring this 30-second counter position in a large arc at 6 o'clock. Designed to resemble a speedometer of a sports car or motorbike, the hand advances along the counter and returns swiftly to its starting position every half a minute. So if you're in for a bit of continuous action, well, that's the piece for you. So the size of this piece is set at 42.8 millimeter, but as with all Mosers, I mean, the simple elegance of the design makes it not so obvious. The HMC 250 automatic movement is based on the in-house HMC 201, has a 3-day power reserve, and can fathom depth of 120 meters. Okay, next piece, this time coming from Germany, as Moritz Grossmann just introduced a new piece in its Bennu collection with the 37 Arabic Vintage. As you can guess, it's 37 millimeter in width, an elegant size, and comes in a brushed steel case with an anthracite matte grainy structured dial featuring very classy Arabic numerals. Small seconds at 6 o'clock, and naturally holds a very finely decorated movement, something we're accustomed to with them. I personally really like that they've been using the historical logo, just fits very nicely with this piece. In 2020, MBNF had released an amazing series of its legacy machine Split Escapement in collaboration with Swiss genius sculptor Eddie Jacquet, and the theme and inspiration of these pieces was set in the world of Jules Verne. Well, MBNF and Eddie Jacquet pursued with this fantastic collaboration, and still remaining in the world of literature, the inspiration now comes from classic novels such as The Three Musketeers, The Jungle Book, and Robinson Crusoe. Obviously, they are pièces uniques, and a further 5 pieces will come later on based on The Call of the Wild, The Last of the Mohicans, Moby Dick, Robin Hood, and Treasure Island. I mean, the level of craftsmanship is simply amazing, and what a joy to look at your watch, a full story on each and single one of them. So a total of 8 pieces will be released overall, and I just love how watch brands can put forward with such collaborations the work of these great artisans. Magnificent. Thank you. Well, we recorded this edition a few days back and just had to make a few additions as many new watches just popped up in the meantime. CUBITUS. Well, we'll start with Arnold & Son, who just introduced new versions in its Nebula collection with the Squelette. The 40mm watches come in 3 editions, gold, steel, and black, and the gold edition is limited to 88 pieces and is available only on the steel bracelet. The difference from the other models is that its components are gold colored, which creates a refined look of the skeleton movement. All three models feature modernized cases from the original Nebula collection, with the bezel which has been softly rounded, the lugs streamlined, and the case middle adjusted to a more vertical profile. So the skeletonized dial of each timepiece provides a perfect view of the AS5201 caliber, boasting a 90-hour power reserve and adorned with the Rayon de la Gloire motif, one of Arnold & Sons' distinctive aesthetic signature. So the graphite hue of the steel case gives the watch a light architectural appearance, and the Nebula 40 steel is being introduced in two initial steel versions. The first version features a black main plate, flange and barrel covers, which can be paired with a choice of 3 straps, stainless steel, alligator or textured rubber. As mentioned earlier, the second version showcases gold-colored movement components and is limited to just 88 pieces. Okay, and obviously we had to include something regarding the new Patek Philippe CUBITUS collection. Wouldn't have been very professional from us, right? Well, before talking about the watches themselves, just had to mention the intense buzz that preceded the official launch, as Fortune magazine made a little error which ultimately might be a little bit costly for them, as 1 week prior to the presentation held in Munich to some happy few, Fortune ran an ad in its magazine in the US with a clear picture of the new piece, and this triggered quite a shitstorm on social media and other specialized forums. People speculating if this was actually even true or possible, and reflects quite well the antagonizing effect this new collection is apparently sparking. So the CUBITUS is the first new collection from Patek since 25 years. Yeah, 25 years is quite a long time, so you can imagine the thought processes that went along the Patek team, and in particular in the mind of Thierry Stern regarding this new line. But something I've already said is the fact that Patek is one of the very rare brands to offer various collections of timepieces instead of focusing on the top seller and then milking it like crazy. They like to balance things, always have done, and in my opinion, this is quite remarkable. I mean, one could be happy to take easy decisions driven by financial objectives alone, but the fact that Patek is privately owned allows them to be different and take risks. Okay, I'm not saying insane risks, but nonetheless, stopping the 5711 was quite darefull or bold, for instance, and a decision which would have never been taken in any company with a different shareholding strategy. And ultimately, well, Patek is doing just fine. I am not too worried on its financial success, and allows them to make these kind of original moves, such as the CUBITUS. But let's now really talk about the watches, and firstly, one can say that they're sticking with the type of watch which the market wants, meaning sportier inspired watches. But here's the trick, to come up with a square watch is quite a statement. Ask any watch product developer if it's a good idea to develop a square piece. Well, I'm pretty convinced that 99% would tell you it's a bad idea. So in itself, Patek coming with such a shape demonstrates they can navigate against mainstream ideas, and again, I can only respect that. Okay, it's not totally square with these rounded corners, and they had already experienced fully square design before, such as the reference 3854 of the late 70s, but in today's world this remains quite a bold move. Of course, there is some family resemblance with the Nautilus, take the dial, the bracelet, but please also remember that the Aquanaut was also some sort of evolution of the Nautilus when it was initially launched in the late 90s. And at the time, well, the Aquanaut also triggered quite some sparks, and today no one would ever question the existence of this collection. So all in all, you have 3 models that were presented, all coming in a 45mm case. This may sound big, and I haven't seen any in the flesh yet, but with square watches, it generally doesn't have the same visual effect compared to round models. So besides this, the watch is quite thin at 8.3mm, so I guess it mustn't look too chunky on your wrist. And to achieve this, well, Patek came with an evolution of an automatic movement seen in 2019 and now called the Caliber 26-330 SC, beating at 4 Hz with a power reserve of up to 45 hours. And one of the nice features is that it has a stop-second mechanism, meaning that when you pull the crown, well, the central seconds hand stops, which lets you set the time with more precision. First iterations come in a steel case with steel bracelet and an embossed green dial, or a bicolor steel and rose gold version with blue dial, both with a date window at 3 o'clock. And then you have the platinum version, slightly thicker at 9.6 millimeter, which features a central big date with day of the week indication in the subdial found at 7 o'clock, which also includes a moon indicator and a small seconds counter at more or less 4 o'clock. So this version has a fabric strap, as I guess it would have been too heavy with the platinum one, without mentioning the final price tag. Okay, I won't go into any further details, but bouncing on this pricing element, I was a bit surprised with the price positioning of these pieces. Initially, I thought that this collection was bound to be set in the middle ground between the Nautilus and the Aquanaut, but starting at 35,000 Swiss francs for the steel version and up to 75,000 for the platinum big date makes it stand directly against the Nautilus, so first surprise for me. And then, I know this might sound a little bit geeky, but for such a price tag and therefore playing in the field of haute horlogerie, well, I would have appreciated for a mouvement de forme, meaning a shaped movement with at least a square base plate. And another thing which also surprised me is that they didn't come up with some kind of interchangeable bracelet. And when some years back Vacheron introduced the new overseas with this bracelet option and were really talking a lot about it, well, I was not really impressed and found at the time that it was kind of a bit gimmicky. I mean, focus on the watch and its mechanics. But today I have to admit that it's a pretty cool feature which lets you change quite simply the identity of your timepiece according to what you're wearing, for instance. So it's practical, easy to do by yourself, and we've seen so many other brands doing the same with their new releases. So yes, a bit surprised that this was not included by Patek, but again, a way to be different, I guess. Okay, I will leave my final judgment for later on once I see the pieces in real, and I know the controversy will most certainly continue among collectors and other passionate people, and I'm not too surprised as novelties generally fuel this kind of debates. And then in a couple of years, well, everything will be forgotten and even accepted, you see. The next model is yet another great collaboration of H. Moser and Company, this time with Masséna Lab, which is well known for its great designs and watches. So the Endeavour chronograph was inspired by the H. Moser model from the mid-20th century and has a distinctive vintage feel. I mean, the classic layout of this timepiece is outlined by a signature funky blue fumé dial, which H. Moser logo inspired from the 40s, and sophisticated markings of all technical elements on the dial. For instance, the tachymeter scale, the chronometer graduation, the sub-dials and the hands, all of them feature superluminova to ensure perfect legibility in any situation. The tachymetric scale allows the ground speed to be precisely measured and also recalls the practical purpose watches would fulfill for explorers and aviators of the mid-century. So inside the case lays the HMC 220 automatic manufacture caliber with Dubois Desprats chronograph module, and the stainless steel case measures 41 mm and is 13.3 mm thick. The watch comes with a hand-stitched brown Koulou leather strap and is limited to 100 pieces. Sweet piece, I have to say. Okay, well, you see, this had to be added, but now let's go back to the initial presentation. Okay, next, and Vacheron Constantin came up with a new timepiece to mark the 20th anniversary of its Patrimony collection. This year, the collection, which started as a tribute to the elegance and sophisticated design of Vacheron's watches from the 50s, has a special theme. From geometry to artistry. I mean, we have seen some of these pieces presented at Watches of Wonder early this year, but closer to Christmas, Vacheron decided to take a bold step forward and make a collaboration. No, nothing funky or too crazy, but just enough to put forward the beauty of geometry and architecture. For this, Vacheron teamed up with a French designer, Aura Ito, whose key word is simplexity, or the art of making complicated things easy. So the new timepiece comes in a 40mm yellow gold case in a limited edition of 100 pieces, and the Patrimony by Aura Ito inherited all the best features of the original super slim watch from 1907. The same round case with a slim bezel, slender curved hour markers, baton hands, pearl minutes tracks, and refined finishing. Everything that underlines the timepiece design created more than 60 years ago. And the distinctive feature of the new watch, however, is its fantastic, mesmerizing dial composed of concentric circles. It reminds you of a Japanese Zen garden or the rippling waves on the water. And underneath lies the self-winding in-house caliber 2450 Q6, which features an open-work oscillating weight of 22-karat gold inspired by the Maltese cross, visible from the case back. A very nice dress watch for those who appreciate classic design but want to stand out. Okay, a bit more sportier now, but still very elegant, with two new versions of the Instrument de Vitesse by Angelus. They are called Indianapolis and Silverstone editions and respectively come either with a blue or grey dial. I like the idea of monopusher chronograph, and these watches have a large central second hand but no subdials, so you can't really keep track of elapsed time, but in a certain way, I mean, who cares? I mean, these watches are just really nice, and therefore you can say that the main idea is if you want to have your second hand running or not. They come in a 39mm steel case, and I personally just love how these indexes stand out, and for info, both editions are limited to 25 pieces. Let's continue, and for those who travel a lot, well, here's the first jet lag resistant watch made by Fortis. The Swiss watch brand, founded in 1912 in Grenchen, has a long history of working with space exploration. They have quite a nice balance of price-performance rate and were actually tested in space, same as their iconic timepiece created in collaboration with NASA's Gemini project and the Russian Space Agency. So the new watch, however, is not destined for space travelers. As it is stated on the front page of Fortis' website, Vagabond is a watch made for cosmopolitan citizens. The Grade 5 titanium cushion-shaped case measures 40mm and is equipped with their triple gasket crown system, and the grain finish dial features their bi-directional GMT ring made from 18-karat gold, and inside the case is hidden the chronometer certified automatic manufacturer caliber Werk 13, developed in collaboration with Genève. And last piece to presented is the new Omega Speedmaster, first Omega in space. It is a tribute to the Speedmaster worn during the groundbreaking Sigma 7 mission in 1962 by astronaut Walter Wallisch Schira. And the astronaut bought the watch for his private collection, but eventually took it on the mission, making it the first Speedmaster worn in space. The new watch is based on the original CK2998 model and is driven by a manual winding chronograph movement with a coaxial escapement. Approved by Metas, it offers resistance to magnetic field up to 15,000 Gauss and features a free-sprung balance with a silicon balance spring. So the size of the case is a neat 39.7mm, and it actually looks more elegant than the original model from 1962. One noticeable thing that stayed intact is a superluminova that covers indexes and alpha-style hour and minute hands, giving it a clear vintage touch. Its goldenish color matches nicely the gray-blue dial and makes you think of a starry summer night. All right, we're reaching the end of this prime time, but just wanted to mention two things. First, and this will be part of Christie's Hong Kong auction to be held on the 27th of this month, as our passionate watch friend Arthur Alexanian, goldsmith by trade, has been working for quite some months on a very special loop, a totally unique loop in fact, handcrafted in 18-karat solid gold and requiring more than 300 hours of work. Yeah, quite crazy for a loop, but just look at how it has been diamond hammered by hand, of course, and I had the opportunity to see it in real, and besides the level of finishing, which is quite something, well, this object is just totally unique. Never seen such a crazy loop. Okay, and finally, just wanted to mention that we are working hard on the Horopedia Foundation project. This is indeed taking a lot of time, and we knew that from the start that we will be in for a massive undertaking, but we're clearly moving on, and new pages and new videos are being continuously added to the encyclopedia. We will soon have some major announcements to be made around this project, but it feels like such a meaningful mission. Just love it, and don't hesitate to give us your thoughts about after visiting its website at horopedia.org. All right, we're done for the day. Hope you enjoyed it, and as mentioned previously, can't wait to share with you these next videos, plus obviously some other ones that might well pop up in the meantime. Well, I wish you the very best, and I would like to express our immense gratitude to our patrons who help us make this happen. Thank you so much, and a massive Viva Watchmaking your way. See you real soon. Bye.